Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. So today we're going to discuss Samuel Piette's extension, that contract extension that he just signed. We're also going to talk a bit about the Canadian Premier League final, and of course, we will have Wubin Spasius here for a small interview of 10 minutes. That and a lot more on episode 107 on the Ball is Round. So welcome everyone, and welcome to the show. So today, for the regulars, I'm the only regular that's here, but I'm joined by my good friend, someone that's been here at the Ball is Round. Maybe it's the third time for him.
Second time.
Second time.
Yeah.
Okay, so Elias Gregoriadis from the Canadian Press. Elias, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's always nice to discuss soccer with you. Before we start, I don't know if you want to talk. I know you did last time, but if you want to talk about your work and where you write and what do you do as a journalist for the Canadian Press?
Yeah, of course. So like you said, I cover CF Montreal for the Canadian Press. That includes game coverage and preview pieces, and then any kind of big news that's going on with the club. For example, transfers. So it should be a very busy off season. But yeah, so it's pretty much just coverage of that, all the big news, all the important stuff going on in and around CF Montreal, and it's a lot of fun, obviously.
Yeah, of course it is. It is a lot of fun, and there's a lot to cover this year. It's been an amazing year for CF Montreal. Yes, there was a down, unfortunately, when they were eliminated at home against New York City FC, but it was a great season to cover, right?
Yeah, I mean I've covered a lot of different soccer teams in my very short career as a journalist, but it's always easier to cover teams that are winning. Teams are doing well, people are more likely to talk to, people are more likely to give you good answers. It's easier to write when everyone is in good spirits, the morale is high, and obviously with a unit like this where everyone gets along very well, and core that was one of the biggest parts of this team of this season, was how well they function as a unit, right? So you really did get that energy all the way up into the press box or into the post game, media availability, and covering teams like that is always entertaining. And there's no shortage of stuff to write about, and their success breeds interest from other teams, which is why we're going to have such an interesting offseason to see, who leaves, who stays. There could be I think there could be up to like 4 or 5 people that are being looked at overseas to move into, if not top 5 European leagues, right underneath, Portugal, Belgium, Eredivisie, like where Georgia Mihailovic just went. So a lot of very interesting European opportunities for a lot of these players.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. But let's talk about a bit about your work. How many times in 2022 have you had to throw your text away in the last 5 minutes of the game?
It's a bit of
a journalist nightmare, right?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of bittersweet, because you do watch these games and they're super entertaining and they're so captivating, and then at the same time, halfway through, realizing that for example, like the game against Columbus, when they clinched the playoff spot, where I'm writing it as a 2-0 loss, and then they've deferred qualifying to next week, and then they score 1 goal. So I'm like, all right, it was Wanyama, I believe, who scored the first goal. It's like, all right, you add a little line at the bottom, how Wanyama got like a consolation goal, and then move on to next week. And then Brogiard, of course, gets his goal in the 95th minute, and my deadline is 5 minutes after full time. So all of a sudden, amidst all this excitement, this like internal panic sits, and you're like, oh God, I have to rewrite the entire article. I'll never forget this, and I'm gonna tell the story until the day I die. But it was last year when Montreal was playing Red Bulls, and they were losing 2-1, I believe, right? And I'd written the article as a 2-1 loss, and then I forgot who got brought down in the box, but Montreal got the penalty, right? In the 90 something minutes. So I write the article expecting them to score the penalty. So I rewrote, half my article because the entire game changed. Then they missed, so I rewrite it as a loss. Then they went to VAR when Coronel stepped off the line.
Yeah.
So the Peds got to rewrite my article again. And then I think Johnson took the first one. Then it was Kyoto that took the second one, and he missed as well. So I had to rewrite the article again and include that they missed. And then they went to then they then they did the
They went to
third
the bar
penalty, and
again.
Wanyama finally scored.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the most entertaining games I've ever been to, but it was also one of the most terrifying games because I had to write all this, and the whiplash that I got, I don't think I've still recovered from it. It was extremely chaotic, but it's one of those things that it's such a fun experience that in the moment it was terrifying, but now I look back on it and it's a very fond memory, of course. So
Of course, of course. Now let's talk about the rest of the news of CF Montreal. CF
yeah,
Montreal, of course, we talked about the loss. It's funny we started the postmortem of the season last week with Tristan Damour that was here on the show. So we covered a few players that did the presser, and we did cover Samuel Piette. So the way that we did it, I don't know if you had time to, if you had time to listen to it, but
I did.
oh, perfect. Okay, so you know the formula. So I'm gonna give you a chance to maybe grade Samuel Piette and then we'll talk about his contract extension. So just in one or two sentences, the season of Samuel Piette. Will he stay or will he go? But now we know that he's gonna stay. And of course, what's your grade on 10 for Samuel Piette?
Samuel Piette was very interesting because I do feel like a lot of times he was given the short end of the stick, especially when he played that double pivot in the midfield with Wanyama, where he would be the one subbed off
Yeah.
for whatever kind of adjustment else he was making. And it kind of undercut how well he was playing. And I think this was probably the biggest since he got here in the last 5 years. This has probably been the biggest season of growth, right? Because he's always been a tremendous ball winner. He's always been a great engine. He always works extremely hard, runs all over the pitch. But this year was when he finally, started contributing offensively, right? It's when he started, he has this ball from the right side of the midfield that goes across to the back post, and it's lethal. And it's gone to the point where I started noticing, especially towards the end of the season, teams would set up to defend it as like a primary offensive threat for them, right? They would have someone close Piette down immediately. That would never happen. Piette was never seen as a threat with the ball, right? So it's an incredible development. And there was all like this won't he leave, um with all the questions swirling around all these players, and people's contracts being up, or transfer links. He's always talked about how he loves it here, right? And he's from here. He's Armbonga Sush, right? So I was not surprised when I was surprised to see how long he was extended for. It's a very nice show of confidence,
Yeah.
but I wasn't
Yeah.
surprised to see the news that he extended, right? Um, if I'm going to give him a grade based purely on the fact that he didn't play as much as I had hoped, I'm going to give him an 8. It could be
Oh,
more.
okay. Nice.
I genuinely think that he came alive this year, and he was, Kone had this breakout season. Victor Wanyama is an exceptional player. He's played at the highest level, right? Georgi Mihailovic had an MVP season before his injury, right? So Sam Piette kind of got lost in the shuffle of everyone else's storylines developing, and he just quietly did his own thing, but he did it in a remarkably effective way. And to the point where, like, if I'm thinking back, I can't think of games where I'm like, Piette had a bad game,
Yeah.
right? He was a liability. He was this, he was that. He would always perform and he would always deliver. He may not stand out, which is, I think, one of the reasons why he would get subbed off instead of Wanyama, or one of the reasons that he may not have gotten as much attention. But he was quietly and efficiently one of the most consistent players this season, right? And I have to tip my cap to him because it's something that he struggled a bit with, right? His work ethic has always been there, but in terms of delivering, especially in a team that likes to play with the ball, has not always been a sure thing. But this year has been a massive step forward, and if I'm the club, I'm locking his contract down as soon as possible. It's what they did, right? It's their first off-season move.
let's talk about that move, okay? The club, by the way, thanks for agreeing with me with the same grade that I gave to Samuel Piette, 8 out of 10. I think my colleagues gave 7 or 7.5. So I'm very happy. I have some support somewhere. So that's perfect.
I was in between 7.5 and 8, but I think 8 just because I value consistently so much, right?
Yeah,
And you
consistency,
can't not.
but also growth, as you said.
Yeah.
Growth for me is very important, and the transformation of Samuel Piette has to be noted and has to be underlined, and that's exactly what we're doing by giving an 8. So that's perfect. Now, looking at the club, okay, we all know what's going on with the club right now with all the Wilfried Nancy talks and everything. How important was it for the club to announce, a good step forward or a good news right away in order to revive a bit of hope amongst the fan? Because right now, you know, it doesn't look like nobody's really convinced that Wilfried Nancy will be back. Do you think that's a move from the club to really, try to send some positive vibes like right away, or do you think there's something else behind the scenes?
I do see them trying to, generate a little bit of momentum, especially given the way that they lost, right? The first half was they dominated the ball, but it was very much a mid-season CF Montreal where they would dominate the ball, they get the lion's share of the chances, and then they would just concede,
Hmm.
right? And then that's how they ended up losing the game, and that's how they lost a few games over the course of the season. And it felt like one of those frustrating games. So I think that the way they ended their season, I think they're looking to kind of, you know, generate a little bit of momentum. I think the next big thing they're working on is probably I mean, like what Wanyama said in his postmortem media availability, right? He's going to go on vacation, but I think that the second he gets back, that's going to be the team's first priority because um, Nassi's contract is automatically extended by his option, right? So I don't think he'll be leaving. I find that to
Oh wow. Okay.
I I'll be shocked if he leaves just because of the fact that one, he's under contract. Olivier Renard doesn't seem too keen to let him go. Their project has been there's proof of concept with the fact that they're getting all this attention, with the fact that they found this much success, and squad rotation is going to be inevitable, especially in a team that has success.
Yeah.
But in terms of staff, if it ain't broke, you have to keep it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's people coming up through the ranks as well. There's young players that may not perform necessarily immediately at the level of an Alistair Johnston or a Kamal Miller or a Georgi Mihailovic, but there's people coming up through the ranks like Sean Rea, like Jojo Quizera, like Broguillard, who again Quizera and Broguillard got minutes in the first team, and I found them to be breaths of fresh air, especially if the game got a bit locked down. It's a burst of pace. It's like a shot in the arm, right? Rhea, who's been exceptional with Valor. These are all players that can come in and, in due time, fill these roles. And I think that you have to have some form of consistency, at least at the front office level, right? Because
Yeah.
squad rotation happens all the time. But if you have a manager coming in and out, even when you're winning, then what kind of message does it send?
Yeah, you're right. You're right, and also you need to have that sort of core within
Yeah,
within that team, and he's part of that core. He's part
absolutely.
of the culture that the club is trying to instill. Right. So now, right now, yes, Olivier Renard said that. Yeah, he's trying to get players from abroad, and to be able to develop them and then sell them, of course, for a profit. But second of all, and that's the second pillar of the development of the growth of the club, is to develop academy players, and they need a leader, the academy players, and Samuel Piette plays that role in a way, right?
Yeah. No, I mean you're absolutely right. Right. There's a core in terms of like technical ability and delivering on the field, but there's also a core in terms of team morale, in terms of
Yeah.
you know keeping everything together as a unit. And you could tell that Samuel Piette's one of those players that people rally around. Wilfried Nancy, you heard it in the postmortem. Every single player was talking like it was Dead Poet Society, right? They had like he changed my life. He changed the way I approach the game. There's a reason that you know, players don't just speak highly of their manager just to speak highly of their manager, right? They'll compliment, but they won't speak about them on like a philosophical level like that unless there's a profound impact that he has.
Yeah.
And we don't see the man manager in Wilfried Nancy as much as the players. Where we see the tactician, we see, he loves to talk about the way he sets his players up. He loves to talk tactics, but we don't see the interpersonal part of it as much, right? And we got like a brief glimpse into how he interacts with his players in the postmortem. But that's something that's not necessarily looked at for him. And I think that's super crucial to have in your core, right? Players are important, but if you need a manager to tie everything together, or else it's just a bunch of players that get along well, that like playing together. But there needs to be some sense of direction,
Yeah.
and we've done that exceptionally well.
Yeah, I think that you need both. You need the,
Yeah,
the players and you need the coach, but you need some key players. And Samuel Piette is that kind of player,
yes,
right? And
absolutely.
and you have that manager that you need also as a central figure of the whole project. And I completely agree with you. Let's move back to Samuel Piette. And
Yeah,
another question for you: just having him for 3 years, yeah, okay, 2 years plus
an option.
an option, of course. So he's here until 2025, and with an option for 2026. Um, do we think? Are we sure that Samuel Piette is going to be the team captain? Now, it makes him, in a way, the absolute team captain of that team for the next 3 years, or you think that it doesn't mean anything, that contract and extension, regarding the captaincy?
I think it was a reaffirmation of their support of him, right? He is the team captain, and his relationship with the team, with the city, with the club has always been incredibly strong. And rarely for not more than a few minutes, people are annoyed with Piet, even if he has an off game. Very quickly, you remember the impact he has on the team on and off the field. And I think that renewing for that long, even though I was a little bit surprised it was for for until 2025, I believe. It's kind of reaffirming that the club has him at the core of this team. And I
Yeah,
think
of
that,
course, it's
yeah,
important. It's
yeah,
important.
it's with all this uncertainty, with all these loose ends at the end of the season, I think that having this come out right out of the gate kind of brings some stability. So I was not surprised. Like I said, I wasn't surprised that Piet was the first one extended. I think Wanyama is the next priority. And because again, the European transfer window doesn't open yet, right? It opens after the World Cup. So I think that all of the players that are, Kamal Miller, Kone, Alistair Johnston, I think they're all like, I'm going to the World Cup. Whatever happens after the World Cup happens after the World Cup, but that's not on my radar right now.
Yeah, and it's important also before all the options that Montreal has within MLS in the next few weeks, right? Because yes, there's the MLS Cup next week, but also the trade window opens on November 7th for half a day. Or for a couple of days, sorry, with on the 9th, closing on the 9th, and on the 10th you have the expansion, the expansion, the clubs that are protecting some players or are not protecting some players for the expansion draft that will happen on the 11th. Then you have the 14th, where you can give offers to free agents. Then all those dates, that deadline dates that are coming very soon. By signing Samuel Piette for an extra 3 years, are you telling the other clubs that, you know what, I'm not going to protect him? What, you want to take him? You have him under contract for 3 years, or do you think that it's not related to CF Montreal not protecting Samuel Piette? Because I've seen and I've read so many people on Twitter saying, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, they're just signing him an extension so that the next expansion draft, the team that's in the expansion draft will not pick him up." I don't think so. I think that Samuel Piette is going to be protected. No.
I think they will protect him just
Yeah.
because, again, Piette is you get what you pay for in terms of Samuel Piette, and you do end up with that result in the field. And the fact that he is so his work ethic will make him fit into any system. So it's not like he's like, will he be good outside of Steve Montreal? Yes. His work ethic and his ball winning ability and now his improved distribution will mean that, he can play in any team's midfield. I think that they're going to protect him anyway because again, the technical staff at the club don't strike me as um very sneaky people. I feel like they're very upfront with their intentions. I feel like they're very
Yeah.
upfront with, the direction they bring the club in. And based on every interaction I've had with the club, that's how they do it. They tell you straight up. If they have something to say, they will tell you. And if they don't have something to say, they don't say it. Right. So it's nothing like, and no, they don't have any backdoor political or nefarious agendas. And I think that they're extending Samuel Piet because they want him at the club. And I think that they're going to protect him because he's a valuable asset. Like we were talking about just now, right? He's a part of that core, and he is the team captain. So I don't think that there's any ulterior motive. I think maybe that extending the contract was probably just like an announcement that, like, maybe people that are figuring out who's getting protected and who's not. He just signed a new contract. They wouldn't go through all that trouble and not protect him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. That's why, when I read this, I was like,
Yeah,
no,
I haven't
I
read
don't
that,
think
but
so.
that's a bit of a weird take. I haven't read
Yeah,
that, but yeah.
yeah, it's very weird. Let's move on to our next subject because, yes, of course, we're very happy that Samuel Piet has signed a new contract, an extension. He's the team captain. We talked about this, I think, a lot, but you know, we're in Canada here, and
We are in
yes, here
Canada.
on the ball is round. We don't really cover the Canadian Premier League much. Sometimes we have some players that come and give us interviews, and that's always very interesting. And we'll have an interview of Woben Spashes in the next few minutes, just before the Canadian Premier League final. Elias, you have followed the Canadian Premier League. I've been
Yeah.
following the league since 2019, the first season. How much did that league grow in 3 years?
It's it makes me really proud as someone who
Four
follows
years.
Canadian soccer. Yeah, it
Yeah,
makes me
four
incredibly
years.
proud as someone who follows Canadian soccer, right? To see that, yes, in terms of its standing in Canada's soccer fandom is growing, but from the quality of the product that they put out, you see CPL teams consistently taking it to the three Canadian
Yeah,
MLS teams in the Canadian Championship, and more often than not, but they do come out with wins. It's not like oh my god, they win once every 5 years here. You can realistically expect them to pull out some upsets, right? Vancouver Whitecaps have been the victim of that. Forge, I believe, took Montreal all the way to penalties last
yeah,
year, right?
yeah,
So it's not like these teams park the bus and hope for a fluke and then oops their way in once every few years. These are teams that are posing legitimate threats. Now, again, Vancouver won the championship, won the Canadian Championship. Montreal handled Forge this year 3-0. It was relatively straightforward, but you can tell that there is a significant jump from the first few years to where they are now. And I'm really excited because, this is the first year that I followed the league very closely, right? I've always followed it with one eye, but this is the first season that I've been very invested in the CPL, and it's been an incredible season, right? And honestly, all four of the top four teams had a very real shot, but at the end of the day, Atletico and Ford are just a cut above. They are, and it's so tight. That's the thing too, right? Because both teams have such quality, and they both have these big game players. And I was watching the four semifinal games of the two legs of each side, and it is great quality soccer too. It's not
yeah,
just it's not what you think of like a second division team, if you a second division league, if you think about it in the hierarchy of North American soccer, right? They're playing quality soccer and they're putting on a really great show.
yeah.
And I think this final is going to be another example of that because again, these two teams are in great form. I mean, I think if you look at form, I think Atletico has the upper hand. They've been unbeaten in like I think their last 8 or 9 games, and they have Balutabla who's been pulling out all these huge goals and these huge moments, and they're such a difficult team to beat, and that's why they won the league this year, right? They lost 5 games this year, and it's because they have fewer wins than Forge, but won the league because they keep on finding ways to get results, and that's what championship teams do.
Yeah,
Whether or not you deserve your points, you find your results. I think that's something that's going to happen again. I'm personally backing Ottawa to win this, even though I think that Forge has more experience. I think that Atleti this season have been so mentally tough and the immense pressure that is a final. I think that they're going to find a way to get a result, right? You have all these weapons up top for Forge, but you have Ali Bassett, you have Balutabla, you have Ali Bassett who won the Player of the Year award, right? You have Balutabla, and I think that they're going to find a way to break down this Forge defense. It's first of all, it's exceptional, um,
yeah.
best in the league, I think, and it's gonna be wildly entertaining.
It always is. The CanPL is really interesting to watch, as you said earlier. You talked about the final four, the four semifinals. Uh, let's talk a bit about the two finalists. Okay, you did talk briefly about them. First of all, we have Forge FC. Forge FC, that's maybe the best team in the history of the Canadian Premier League. When you look at the results that they've had, going very far in the CONCACAF League, being able to win the first two editions of the Canadian Premier League, going into the final last year and just losing, unfortunately, against Pacific FC. And this year, again, after a slow start, and most of the time they are having slow starts, but this year also they had a slow start, but they were still able to turn things around and go and have and beat Cavalry in the semifinal there.
Yeah,
Their biggest rival, I think, in the Canadian Premier League. We've seen that since the first year, since year one, and then get to that final. How important is that experience? How well coached that team is,
yeah,
and how much talent do they have?
yeah. I mean, look, experience speaks for itself, right? At any level of competition, in any tournament, in any sport, right? Experience at the end of the day is the most vital, is the most crucial thing to consider. This team has been here before, and that's one of those moments where when the going gets tough, you rely on that experience. And again, to bring it back to CF Montreal, but that was one of the things that cost them against New York, right? New York has been in this situation, Montreal has not. Forge has been in this situation. This is a very new experience for the Atletico side, right? Again, they may have had individuals in big moments, but as a unit, this is still a very new experience for them. And Forge are coming in here as the elder statesmen. Even if it's a relatively new league, these are the elder statesmen. They have run this league since its inception. And so that is an incredibly often overlooked aspect, right? You always look at form and you look at, people tend, you get drawn in by stats, you get drawn in by form, you get drawn in by who's hot and who's playing really well. But experience is ultimately, you know, when it comes down to it, it is one of the deciding factors. I don't think that it's enough for Atleti to get overwhelmed. But I do think that Ford are going to try and create these scenarios, right? Where whether it's getting under Ottawa's skin, whether it's, creating these situations where you have to kind of rely on the fact that, we are champions, we've been in the final, we've been at all these different levels, even continentally, that you keep your composure and you see out the result. And I'm saying this all while having all while backing Ottawa in this game because I do think Ottawa are going to come out on top here. If you look at the way they've constructed their team this season, it's so impressive to see just the improvements they've made. And I think that if there's one team that won't get, you know, overwhelmed by this experience, it's going to be Ottawa. Right? All these crazy games. Forge did beat Ottawa 4-0 in one game of the season, but I do think that was a fluke because the rest of the games was a 1-0 win for Ottawa, and then the other two were a 1-1 draw and a 0-0 draw. So I don't think that this is going to be that difficult of a mental battle for Ottawa. It's going to be, obviously it's a final, it's always going to be mentally taxing, but this is not something that they're going to kind of get there and then freeze. And it's just going to be super entertaining. And I think that it's going to be a chess match because, like you said, right, forwards are exceptionally coached. And I think I think the team is going to be set up in a way that will they're going to come out and try and put pressure on Ottawa immediately, right? They're going to try and force those mistakes that teams with not as much experience will make. But I don't think that Ottawa are going to succumb to that.
It's going to be interesting, and let's talk about you talked about Atletico Ottawa. So for people that don't really follow the Canadian Premier League, Atletico Ottawa is a club owned by Atletico Madrid. That's why they're called Atletico Ottawa. They did try to have that Spanish feel in the team in the first couple of years of their existence. It didn't really work. With Mista being the coach back then, and adding, bringing some talent from the academy, and trying to make them shine here in the Canadian Premier League. They did change their model this year. They went and got, you talked about Balou Tabla. They went and got experience also. And of course, they got a new coach too. Tell us a bit about that revival or that new trend, the new team of Atletico Ottawa this year, and how much they surprised everybody, because last year they didn't even make the final four, or even the final. I think they were 6th or 7th, if not 8th, in the league, and this year they were first at the end of the regular season, and now they find themselves in the final. So tell us more about the Atletico Ottawa team.
No, I mean, look, technically their quality speaks for themselves. And there were flashes of it last year, even, right, where even if they didn't have the success that they're having this year, obviously they had moments where they proved that they can compete at that level. And I think the biggest difference this year is that mental toughness, is that, that ability to, regardless of the situation, find your result, right? And in a league, it's so crucial to have that mentality, to have that willpower in the team to, if you're down a goal, you find a goal. If you don't deserve a win, you somehow end up with a win. If you deserve to lose, you somehow end up with a draw. And little details like that is what was sometimes missing with them, right? Where it's points dropped here, points dropped there, and then that kind of just snowballs. And that's something that they've really rectified this season, and it's so nice to watch because it's always good to see a team that has championship caliber, like those intangibles that may not be super visible in the field in terms of statistical output, but the second that you add all these moments up, you kind of start to see the bigger picture, and you kind of start to see that this unit is very difficult to beat, right? You can draw games, you can slug it out, you can finish 1-1 or even 2-2, but it's very difficult to take 3 points away from them, right? And that's one of the crucial things, because if you're already a really good team and you're already a very technically strong team, you're going to get your wins, you're going to get your points. The main difference between being champion and being upper table is those ones, and you saw it, right? There's 2 points separating first and fourth, right? And it's those little moments where you eke out a draw instead of dropping a point, instead of dropping 3 points. You eke out a win instead of settling for a draw. And those are the defining characteristics of champions, and that's why you saw them do it constantly this season. And it's shown, right, that these points, these little additions add up to the point where you win the league by 1 point. Right, and it was an incredible season overall, right? The top 4 were so close, and you went down to the decision day. But I'm so impressed with the philosophical turnaround that the club has had to get everybody behind that, right? Because it's so easy to, you're down 1, you're down 2, and you're kind of just like, you start mentally preparing for next game almost, where you start
Yeah.
thinking about, the right home. You start thinking about what I'm going to eat. You start thinking about all these things, but it's like they kept on task and they got the result, even if they may not have deserved it over the course of 90 minutes.
It's crazy
Yeah.
and that's, I think, a change of mentality that
Yeah.
usually is put in place by the coaching staff.
Yeah.
So the change of coaches, having Carlos Gonzalez leading that team, that manager that is coming out of nowhere in a way.
Literally.
You
Yeah.
know, he was coaching in Kuwait, and then he coached the national team of Kuwait for a couple of games before signing with Atletico Ottawa, bringing even a player with him, with Sissoko coming with him. Yes, there are some loans from Spain, yes, but like the core and the very important pieces of that puzzle are mostly Canadians, and of course you talked about Bassett being
Yeah.
Northern Irish. So very interesting from the coaching staff. Do you think? Who would have thought that a coach would come and in his first year change that team from what they were to what they are right now? Was it something that you thought was possible at the beginning of the year, or you think that Carlos Gonzalez really deserves all the praise that he got? Elias? Oh,
Oh,
we
I'm
lost
back.
Elias. He's
Okay.
back.
All right. Sorry about
No worries at all. So tell us a bit more about how much praise should we give to Carlos Gonzalez, the
Oh,
coach?
uh, all the praise. I mean, it's so difficult to bring a player to bring a manager in and have a whole team buy into the system immediately or
Yeah,
buy into a philosophy immediately, right? It usually takes there's growing pains and there's adjustment periods, and then you finally start to get the whole team around. And it was from the get-go, right? You could tell that there was this different kind of way that they carried themselves, right? Tactically, it wasn't that big of a shift. There was still similar ideas. The team still had a way of playing, but you could tell that they carried themselves differently in different situations. You could tell that there were these changes of pace that you wouldn't see from them last year, and
yeah,
that was one of the biggest things because again, I I did follow Atletico Ottawa more over the past two years than I did other teams, just because I'm interested in seeing Atletico's influence on Canadian soccer. So I did
of
follow them a
course.
bit more, but it's something I recognized from the start of the season, where this team would, it almost felt like a different energy, and then getting behind, a new coach is never easy, but the whole unit seems to have, is on the same page, and it's something very, very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, it is enjoyable. Elias, before we'll talk about our predictions maybe at the end of the show, but we talked about the rookie being Atletico Ottawa, and we talked about the experience and
Yeah,
the juggernaut, I think, of Canadian soccer right
that's fair.
now,
Yeah, that's fair.
which is Forge FC. Right now, when you look at all the experience that Forge FC has,
Mhm.
and you look at their striker being a former CF Montreal academy player that was unfortunately released. And now Wuben Pashis is really leading that team,
Yeah.
leading that league in goals, and leading that amazing squad that is Forge FC. Is there some kind of regret of not having him still with CF Montreal?
I think it's too early to tell if there's any regret. I think that again, Montreal haven't had a problem scoring goals this season.
Yeah,
So I don't think there's too much regret. I think that we'll have to wait and see maybe another year or two before we can see definitively, like, they should have kept them on in lieu of, maybe some other players that didn't make it out in the squad. But it not to take away from what Pash has done this season, which is absolutely exceptional, right? He's taken this team is already so incredibly talented for it, right? Like you said, they are the juggernauts of this league, and he's just kind of shifted it into overdrive, right? They're the best offensive team in the league by some way, and he's kind of that catalyst. So I think that if the club is going to look at it with regret. I don't know. I don't think they will, but I do think that they'll look at it and think there was a chance for us to have an extra offensive weapon, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Montreal was struggling for goals and, they were doing well defensively, but, we're top 15 maybe in the league in goals and we're struggling to find more than, 2 goals a game, then that's something they could have considered. And that's something that maybe they would look back on with regret. But the fact that, you still have Roman Kyoto, you still have, Ismail Kone, who's performing well. You still have Mason Toy. You still have Kai Kamara, who has found the fountain of youth. I don't think that they're too sorry they missed out on Paisius, but what he's done, taking that release and then turning it into, one of the deadliest strikers in the league is something extremely impressive that will garner interest from, if not Montreal, definitely other teams.
Yeah, I agree. Let's wait and see what will happen with Ruben Spasius, and let's hear from him a bit. Sam Savvy, had the chance to have him in an interview. So let's put that interview. He's going to talk a lot about CF Montreal, of course, their season, and of course introduce that Canadian Premier League final against Atletico Ottawa. So let's start this right away.
So I'm happy to be joined for a second time on The Ball is Round by Forge FC striker Ruben Spasius. Thank you so much for coming back on our show, Ruben.
Thank you to you guys. Like I said earlier, it's a pleasure to be here.
Sure, man. So, your team is coming off a contentious playoff series against Cavalry, in which you scored the game-winning goal to send your teams to the final. How did you handle the pressure stepping up to the spot to take that penalty?
Yeah, like he said, a lot of pressure for that PK. At the time, it was 1-0 for us, so a little bit less than if it was 1-1. But I think everyone could see that there were a lot of pressure. But again, that's something that we train in training, especially for the guys who is most likely to take PKs. So I know that if I train something like a PK every day, I'll be able to do it in a game. So after that, of course, there's pressure, but I know that I have the capacity of doing it. So after that, it was just to stay calm.
And talking about pressure, you guys are making it to the 4th consecutive CanPL playoff final appearance on Sunday. What does that level of consistency say about your squad?
Yeah, you can see that in our squad, we want nothing less than the win. And I think it shows every day in training and, of course, during the games, so we can get those results. But again, I think it's a great job from the team, from the club, to be there 4 years in a row and have another chance to fight for that championship.
And for you personally, what would it mean to win the North Star Shield in your first professional season?
It will mean a lot. We had a long season starting here in January, while most of the teams started in March because we had the Champions League.
Yeah.
And then we had our ups and downs. It will mean a lot, especially with that season when at the beginning I wasn't playing that much, and then find a way to the squad, find a way to the starting 11, score my goals. So I think it will be something really, really nice to close everything, if I can say something like this. So yeah, I think it will mean a lot for me and for the whole team.
Absolutely. So now, we're a Montreal podcast for sure. We had to ask you that, but you're a former Montreal Academy player. The hot topic this week in Montreal soccer landscape is Wilfred Nancy. What can you say about him as a coach?
Yeah, no, everyone knows now a little bit more because a lot of players talked about him in a good way, but I know him since I was at the academy. I never really played with him as a coach because I was U14 when he was U16, so he couldn't be my coach at the time. But I know that he's a really good person, really good coach, and he always wanted to help you to go to the next level, help you to progress. So I'm not surprised at all about all the good words that he had from his players, because like I said, I knew it, and like I did the preseason with them, I knew how he was, and I'm pretty sure he kept the same approach with his players. So I can't say nothing bad of him. he's a great coach, and I hope he's gonna stay in Montreal next season. And if not, well, the best for him.
Talking about Montreal's season, they had a Montreal had a very good 2022 season. I know you follow the team. What did you think about their season in general?
I think it was a great season. Like you said, of course, I followed the team. Like I said, I've been at the academy for a long time. I know most of the players there. So yeah, of course, I followed, and I think they did something pretty good. They break a lot of record. I think they they got that respect from the league that I think they didn't have before. Also, the fact that they got that new relationship with the fans. I think overall, 2022 was a great season for CF Montreal, and I think they're gonna build on this for the next season.
No, and you talked about the academy a bit earlier, but there's three players that came out of the ranks of Montreal Academy that have been named for the MVP of CanPL season: Sean Rea, you, and Balou Tabla. What does that say about Montreal's academy? And do you kind of have the feeling that sometimes academy players are not given enough chances at MLS level?
Yeah, for the first part of the question, I think it means a lot, and I don't think we just have to watch about the MVPs or whatever the awards. I think we just have to see in the league everywhere where there's a guy who came from the academy. He's doing well with his club. We know them. There's a lot of them. I'm not gonna name all of them, but yeah, of course, to have that nomination with Balou and Shanria, it means a lot for me. But again, I think the academy is doing a great job, and that in that case, I think we can put the academy on the map. That they're doing a great job with the young players.
And your coach Bobby Smirniotis was rumored to be a very serious candidate as head coach of CF Montreal before Wilfred Nancy was chosen. If Nancy does depart, do you think he'll show interest again? And what can you tell us about Bobby Smirniotis's philosophy of football?
Yeah, I heard of that too. I heard a lot of rumors because again, I was at the academy, so I knew a little bit of it. But why not? We never know. I think he did a great job here with Forge the last 4 years in the CPL, in the Champions League, in the CONCACAF League, and I think we can see it by the way that Forge play, that he has a real football philosophy, and that if a team can stick to it, they can do a lot of great things. So again, I hope all the best for him. If it's with CF Montreal next season, if it's still at Forge, or if it's somewhere else, I'm pretty sure he's gonna do a great job wherever he's gonna go.
Sure, and we're hoping for you guys that he does a great job on Sunday, because Ottawa has already sold more than 6,000 tickets for the final at TD Place, and the president of the club is expecting to sell more than 12,000. Did you expect such a big crowd? And for you personally, how do you prepare going into this game?
Yeah, it's really nice to have all these fans. We know that especially in Ottawa, during all year when they had the home game, the fans were always showing up. So the fact that now it's a final, I think of course it's gonna be more fans. But no, we're not. I think the fact that there's a lot of fans doesn't change a lot for us. We have that. We played those games already, all the finals that we played just in CPL, or the big games, Canadian Championship against Montreal, against Toronto, our Champions League games. We used to play in those big stadiums. We played in Azteca, which is a mythical stadium of soccer. So it's not a problem for us. As long as there's fans, I think it's nice to be on the pitch and to feel the atmosphere. So I think we are ready to play there.
Absolutely, and we'll be ready to follow you guys into that journey. Thank you so much, Wubens, for accepting our invitation again, and all the best on Sunday. Hope you guys get it done.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Elias, what an interesting interview of Wuben Pashas. So Sam seems to be rooting for Forge. You're rooting for Atletico. So who's going to win?
I wouldn't say I'm rooting for them. I think they're going to win. I'm not rooting for them. That's one of the perks of not having any local CPL teams. I don't have allegiance to any one. I just enjoy what's going on at
Of
Atletico right now.
course, of
But
course,
I
of
wouldn't
course.
say that I'm rooting for them. But I do think they will win. Yeah.
Before giving our predictions, there's a very interesting question that Sam asked of Woban Pashas. Let's say Wilfried Nancy departs. For you, is it Bobby Smiriotis that should have the job? Or do you think that we should go again internally, get another coach, maybe Laurent Simon, maybe someone else from internally, or maybe go ahead and go bring another MLS coach or a European coach? Which route would you choose if you had a choice? If you were Olivier Renard?
That's an incredibly interesting question because even Nancy kind of pointed out how it's not just because people are your staff, it does not necessarily mean they're the same kind of coach, be it tactically or the way they approach, handling players. They're not the same as you. So it'll be very interesting to see that, should this happen. Um, I don't necessarily think it'll automatically go to a staff member because it's not like this is not no this isn't like Nancy's entire philosophy is
Yeah,
automatically passed down to every single member of the staff, right? They're their own individuals with their own thoughts and their own ways of going about things.
yeah,
Based on the way that all these Forge players are talking about Bobby Spinotis is very interesting to see because they talk about him the same way that CF Montreal players talk about Nancy. And I think that that could be definitely something worth considering because of the fact that tactically he's proven himself to be obviously very skilled and very competent, but he also does get along with the players from what you can see from what you can
yeah.
tell from people talking about their experience with him. So I do think it's understandable why he was a candidate before Nelsie took the job, and it's understandable why his name's come up again. I don't think they're going to go back into other MLS teams.
I
I
hope
do
not.
I,
I don't
because
know if
again,
you.
like
I don't know
a
if
lot
you
of
read the news, but it seems that the Dynamo is gonna go with Ben Olsen.
really
Yeah, that's what I read today, and
that's
I'm like,
definitely a decision. That's
ish.
definitely a decision. I don't look. I'm not gonna speak for what's going on in Houston. They have their own project. I'm assuming that they believe that he's the best fit for their system. I just don't personally see anyone in MLS
Yeah,
fitting into what they're calling Projet Montréal. I don't see that, right? I think Bobby is an extraordinary candidate. I think that there's obviously people within Nelsie's staff that can follow in his footsteps. He's always I'm assuming that as an assistant you're always learning from your head coach,
yeah,
from your manager, and you're going to by osmosis figure things out, and the one who's most in line with the project might also be heavily considered. But I this is all a little bit hypothetical, and I don't think that Wilfried Nancy's leaving anytime soon, especially with if they keep up these
yeah.
performances.
You
But
said that. You said that. But you know what? Let's entertain the thought that maybe he could
yeah,
leave.
should that happen, I think that those two are probably the two most likely ways of it going of of Renald's thought process, right? It's either promote from within again or look at Bobby Smith, because even if Nelsie does leave, it was by no means a failed experiment. It was by no means a failed project,
Uh,
right? You leave for a bunch of reasons, but in terms of results, you cannot fault with Nancy for the product he delivered.
of course. Now, what do you think? And that's my last question. Regarding that subject, a return of Thierry Henry, because you don't have all the pandemic problems anymore. You're able to
No,
travel, so
no.
he's able to go see his family whenever he wants. He's the one that really started that project. He left because of the pandemic problems. Right now, he's not a coach. He's just a pundit. He's just commentator for Amazon Prime. Uh, do you think it's a possibility to see a return of Thierry Henry here?
Honestly, I had personally, I'd close the book on the Thierry Henry CF Montréal chapter when he
Yeah.
left. Right? I understand it was on good terms. I understand it wasn't for footballing reasons. I understand why he left. It's a completely valid reason, and I do. I think he could come back and do as good a job because there was you can tell that there was development and you could tell that there was a project under Thierry Henry. It wasn't
Yeah.
directionless. And do I think he can come back and put that together again? I do. I don't know if that's something he wants, and I don't know if that's something the club will entertain.
Okay, let's wait. To be honest, if people have been listening to the ball is round, for the past couple of years, you would know I don't like comebacks. So it's as simple as that. So yeah, I don't think that it's a good thing. It's never a good thing to see a comeback, and it's very rare that it works. Sometimes it does, right? Patrice Vernier, hey my man, it does, but most of the time it's always very disappointing. So let's hope. Let's wait and see to see what will the club decide. And first of all, Wilfried Nancy is not gone yet, so hopefully he will sign an extension and we'll have that news. I think everybody will be very happy to see him stay. Lastly, of course, predictions.
Yes.
Elias, Canadian Premier League final tomorrow. Atletico Ottawa, Forge FC prediction.
I think Atletico is going to win. I think it's going to extra time.
Oh,
I think it's going. I don't think it's going to finish in 90 minutes. I think Atletico is going to come out on top though.
but
I
penalties or a goal
no,
in
extra
extra
time.
time? Okay, so
I
goal
don't
in
think it's
extra
going to
time.
penalties. I think
Balu
it's ending
Tabla?
sorry?
Balu Tabla scoring the
At least
goal in
one.
extra time?
At least one. He has too many of these big game moments for it not to come up again in the final. And
Okay.
he's been playing with a chip on his shoulder all year, and he's been playing exceptionally all year. And he always pulls these dramatic moments out of the hat. And I think there's another one coming. I don't think he's done just yet with this season.
Yeah, you know what? I think Forge FC will win. And I think that Ruben Spashes will score a goal. And I don't think it's going to go to extra time. I think it's going to be a 2-0 or a 2-1 win for Forge FC. I think experience in those kinds of games is very, very, very important. Yes, of course, you're going to tell me Atletico beat Pacific, but Pacific has only been there just once last year and won. Yes, but I think that Forge FC will not be taken down again by a rookie. So I have a strong feeling that Forge FC, the experienced players, the Maxime Tissot's, all those players that are experienced are going to come back on top and win the championship again and get that third Canadian Premier League for Forge FC. And maybe it will be the end of Bobby Spiniotis with the team and a new chapter for him. I don't know where, but I have a strong feeling that we'll see Forge FC win that title tomorrow.
Watching all season, my brain keeps on telling me that Forge is going to win because of everything I laid out and everything that you just laid out. But my gut is giving me Ottawa, and I don't know why. And there's nothing rational about this. And I've always tried to make my predictions with some amount of logic or reason. But for the life of me, I have
it's
to
okay.
go. When it comes
It's
to
okay.
when it comes to individual games or even playoffs, I try and use my brain. But when it comes to finals, it's the most unpredictable thing. And I think that with these teams so close together, I have to go with my gut, and my gut is Ottawa.
Of course, why not? So tomorrow, the Canadian Premier League final against between Atletico Ottawa and Forge FC. It's at 6 p.m. You can watch it on One Soccer, of course, and I think it's elsewhere also on CBC, if I'm not mistaken, or it's somewhere else. I'm not sure where, but I know it's on One Soccer. Go cheer for Canadian soccer. Go watch that game. Elias, thanks a lot for being here again. You're always welcome here on The Ball is Wrong. It's always interesting to hear you, and thanks a lot for being here, man.
Thank you for having me. It's always great to be on. So it's a pleasure as always.
Perfect. So that's it for that episode of The Ball is Wrong, a special episode for today. We will do our regular episode next week. again within the part 2 of the postmortem. And that's it. Thank you very much, and see you next week on another episode of The Ball is Round.